Hey, it's Caressa.
Hey, it's Maddie.
You're not watching the Disney Channel right now.
You're listening to
Dreadfully Twisted. We are back.
Back again.
Again. I'm tired today.
Same.
But I have a very interesting case today. It's very mysterious. It's unsolved. But before that, I think I had something spooky in my house happen last night. So here's the video. I'm not sure. Like in the video, like my cat comes down the stairs and then the gate just falls over after she walks.
Oh.
But Jeremy said that he thinks it's because it was standing up too right.
Yeah.
But it happened like a minute after I put it there. So why would it fall over?
Yeah.
After it would have felt like fallen over like as soon as I placed it down,
Mhm.
not like after I walked away. I don't know. I heard it fall when I was in the kitchen or in the living room, but so then I was like, I'm gonna check the camera to see which one of the cats knocked it down because like
Yeah.
they do that all the time. But
Meanwhile, she's like, "What is going on?"
yeah, I don't know. Do you think that's like a paranormal thing, or do you think it just fell over?
Honestly, it could be either, but the paranormal side of me is like, it's
That's what I wanted to say too.
especially because things have been happening recently.
Yeah, and normally it does happen on Saturday nights, and that's the only thing that I caught.
Yeah.
It's not like Snickers like touched it or anything.
No, he didn't. He didn't at all.
Like she just walked by it. I don't know. Just keeping up with the saga of my spooky house. The heat is getting to me, I think, because it's just way too hot outside. Oh, okay.
It's messing with our brain.
Everything's messing with my brain today. Okay. So, are you ready to
Yes.
get into this? Because this one, I have theories, and I'll tell you my theories
Okay.
after I explain it.
Yeah.
But this case is Finland's most infamous mysterious cases. It is unsolved, like to this day. There are a bunch of theories and people suspected, which I will get into, but it is unsolved. So it was also hard to do the research because a lot of the research is in like Finnish language,
Yeah.
like in books and stuff. So like it was really hard. So like I did have a book that I got from Kira for my birthday that had this case in it.
Mhm.
And then I like watched a couple videos and then I also looked at like articles and stuff. So I did the best I possibly could. And I feel like I did find a lot of information for like, and I'm pretty proud of myself for the stuff, like the work that I did with this. But at the same time, like there's probably more to it, but all the books are in Finnish. So it's really hard to find any information. But this happened in June of 1960 at Lake Bodom. I don't know if you ever heard of this one or not. But
Bodom sounds familiar.
Lake Bodom is in Finland. It is a lake located in the city of Espoo, which is 22 kilometers from Helsinki. The lake isn't secluded and was super close to Espoo, so it was still like, it wasn't like in like a remote area like at all for this to happen. It was just like kind of like a little like spot off in the city.
Yeah.
It was like a lake that everybody went to. It was, and I don't know if it still is, a super like popular camping spot, but in the 1960s, it was a very super popular camping spot that like teenagers would go to and everything. On June 4th, 1960, 4 teens went to go camping at Lake Bodom. They all were from Finland. They were, and it's, if I pronounce these names wrong, I am so sorry. Because I did watch a few videos on how to pronounce these, but in some of those videos, people were like, it's funny, I'm Finnish and you don't know how to pronounce these, is what they were saying.
Yeah.
Like, these other people. But I'm trying my best here.
Most of the time, you'll find that literally videos will pronounce it differently. You
That's
don't even know
exactly-
which one it actually
Like,
is.
one of the things pronounced her name as Miley. Another one pronounced as Mila. So I'm just going to pronounce it how I feel like it should be pronounced. And again, I'm so sorry. I do not mean to like butcher these names or anything. It's just, it's hard.
Yeah.
They were Mila Iramelli Bjorklund. She was 15 with her 18-year-old boyfriend Niels. Oh, see that like it's I think it's Niels Gustafsson. Anya Tulamaki, who was also 15, with her 18-year-old boyfriend Seppo Boisman. Niels and Seppo were best friends since 12 years old, and they were only 4 months apart in age, but they were always together and inseparable. And even with growing up, they followed the same path. They both became electricians after school and were both working at the same mechanical plant. In May of 1960, Seppo turned 18 and was dating Anya at this point, and that is when Anya introduced Mila to her best friend to Seppo and Niels. Then after Niels' 18th birthday, him and Mila started dating. So it was just like a couple weeks after, a couple months after, because they're 4 months apart. And then on June 4th, 1960, about 2 weeks later, after Mila and Niels started dating, they all decided they wanted to go camping. They thought that it would be a great start to celebrate the holiday, which I didn't realize what holiday they were talking about in Finland, but I think I say it a little bit later on. It's like a religious holiday, so they wanted to all celebrate it together. But Mila was super excited to go because it was the first summer break where she didn't have to look after her 2 younger siblings. So it was the first time she didn't have to watch them, so she was able to do what she wanted. Kind of sad considering what happens later. Yeah. However, their parents were kind of on the weary side to let her go, like to let both the girls go, which is so understandable because their parents did think of Seppo and Niels as respectful and trustworthy, and they weren't worried for like them going with them. It was just they were worried for like they were going to be out all night in like a not secluded but like an open place. They're not going to have that much protection because they're going to be in a tent.
Yeah.
Like, so they were just worried about them being out in the public at night.
Understandably.
Yeah, like I would be. It was just more of them like camping out at night, and eventually their parents did agree that they could go. As for the boys, Seppo was able to convince his parents that it would be safe because Lake Bodom was only 30 minutes from their home, and it also wasn't in a remote or very deep into the woods. So his parents were like, yeah, you can go, it's fine, you're only 30 minutes from home, which is also so heartbreaking considering what happens.
Yeah.
So they agreed much quicker than the girls' parents did. But for Niels, his parents had no problem with him camping and fishing with Seppo for the night. He didn't tell them that Mila and Anya would be with them. So his parents had no idea that they would be there too. So they're like, yeah, you could go ahead and go out with your friend, go camping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Which could make it suspect for later because you'll see, but at the same time, just be honest with your parents.
Yeah.
They need to know where you are and where you're going just so they know you're safe. They were all able to go, and the next day, June 5th, 1960, is the Christian holiday Pentecost in Finland, so they'd spend it all together, like when they woke up. In Finland, there is a saying, if you don't have a sweetheart on Pentecost, then you won't have one all summer. That's why they wanted to be together in that morning, because they wanted to be with their people. But it's also just like, I don't know if I would let teenagers go camping by themselves. Yeah. That's just me. But again, it was in 1960. Things were probably different back then.
Oh, yeah. People didn't even lock their doors back then. So.
Yeah. That's crazy. I don't know how you can do that.
Yeah.
So, June 4th, 1960, they all went to Lake Bodom. They arrived around 5 p.m. towards the south side of the lake. Seppo and Niels brought their motorcycles. Seppo borrowed a tent from work and brought alcohol, a half-liter of Salamisari liquor, a 370-milliliter bottle of citrus liquor, and some pale lagers. Talking is hard, sorry.
Talking is hard.
Especially because my brain's like pronounced it a different way, and I'm like, no. So Niels and Seppo packed food and fishing equipment, knives and pliers to use. They set up their tent in a small spot, which was on the slope at the tip of the peninsula, which was a short walk from the lake swimming area. However, before unpacking and actually setting up the tent, they all went down the road, like outside the campsite, down the road to a kiosk where like a lot of people would go get camping supplies and stuff. It was like at the entrance of the campsite, or at the entrance of like Lake Bodom, like a little bit down the road. But they went there to get some gum and drinks and like pop and as mixers for their alcohol. And when they got back to their campsite, it was actually around 7:15 at this point. So they spent like an hour and so down there. And they also were eating ice cream too. So they were just like, starting their like little camping trip. Some people were still in the water swimming whenever they got back. So this is when they decided to set up their tent. The tent had the opening facing the east, facing the opposite direction. It wasn't facing the swimming area. It was facing like more of like the trees, and their tent was in the shade. So it was like the opposite direction of the beach. They made the tent poles with branches from the trees nearby, so they actually like shaved them down and everything. And one of them found a rock that was pretty big down the shore at the beach and used it to hammer the wood into the ground as like stakes. So they didn't like have tools, they just used it as like a thing, which also makes me think of later for things, which I just realized now after I was doing this research that could have been something, and I'll tell you why. It was a typical A-frame tent at the middle. Like it was like, you know, like I have a picture of it, which would probably just would be easier to show you a picture, but it was just like an A-frame, like a little teepee thing. And the highest point of the tent was in the middle, and it was at 113 centimeters, and it was not tall enough to stand in, and it had just enough room for 2 people, but they were going to make it work for 4 people, which would just be very tight of a fit, but they also like had to make it work.
Yeah.
And they also leaned their motorcycles up against the trees behind like the tent. Between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. on the morning of June 5th, 1960, while they were sleeping, they were all attacked brutally with a knife and a blunt weapon, which is believed to be a rock or something similar, or it could have been an iron pipe. And that's where I'm like, whoever did this got the rock because they were using that rock
to
hammer in the stakes, and they could have saw it, you know. So it's just an idea that I had.
Yeah.
However, the weapons were never found. So it is hard to say, like, what was used actually for, like, the blunt object. But they know that a knife was used. In this attack, there is a survivor, which is Niels.
If you would have just seen my face, everybody.
Which I said earlier is kind of a suspect, remember? But he is a suspect later, but I don't know if I think it's him.
Yeah.
Because there is another person where I really think it's them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how Niels acts is kind of suspicious.
Be suspicious?
Don't be suspicious, which Niels is being in this episode. However, Niels was hurt, but not nearly as bad as the others, obviously, because he survived.
Yeah.
And I did not mean to laugh. It's just like, wow, I don't know. This whole case is, I wish I knew who did it, because it's unsolved. I just wish I could just know who did it.
Yeah.
Like it's so, like, once I started getting into this, I was like, I need to know. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I need to know what happened.
I know. Once I watch, like, Unsolved Murders, I literally want to go and, like, solve the murder. Like,
yeah,
myself.
I'm about to solve this one. Like, I'm about to, like, put my detective hat on and, like, go deep diving into, like, Finland and try to figure out who did this. Because I need to know. However, the other 3 did not survive. Anya's cause of death was from brain damage due to blunt force trauma. Seppo had a broken jaw, cuts on his face, stab wounds, and also his cause of death was also blunt force trauma. Mila's cause of death was a blunt force trauma, but she had way more severe injuries than the rest of them. After the coroners examined her body, they found that she was stabbed after she had already died, and she had more stab wounds than the rest. And most of the stab wounds were from, like, to her neck, mainly, too. Also, Mila was also naked from the waist down. However, there was no evidence that we know of sexual assault, but it's also just strange because she was Niels' girlfriend.
Yeah.
Why did she get the majority of the, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's sad. Niels had fractures to his face, like his bones, bruising on his face, and a concussion, and he was stabbed in his forehead, which, ow, because, like, you think that would, I don't know, you would have to really, like, I don't know. Sorry, I burped again. The tent was all torn up and was covered in blood. There were slash marks. It was found all of them at one point had been in the tent. And the tent was even attacked on the outside. So whoever was attacking them did not go inside the tent. They did it from outside through the tent. So they don't know. So it's also like maybe she just accidentally got more of the injuries because they were attacking outside and they weren't actually, like, looking at them. Again, like, I just wish I knew, but there's, like, a lot of details in this that, like, I think I know who did it, but it's hard because that person, you'll see. So Seppo and Anya were found in the tent. Milo was found in, like, the beginning of the tent, and then Niels was found on top of the tent. The tent was collapsed and they all ended out outside the tent, but the analysis of the scene proved that they were initially all in the tent from the trajectory of the blood at the scene. The tent also had 25 slashes on the outside, like through it. Some reports say that the only one who was stabbed was Mila, but others didn't say that and said that others weren't, and some said that they all were stabbed. But from all of the reports that I did read and all the resources that I did see, is Mila was the one that had the most injuries, no matter what. Even if, like, so it's, again, it's, like, hard because some people say something and other people say another thing. So, like, it's just hard to get the information correct because it is in a different language.
Yeah.
And I can't read Finnish. I don't speak any other language than English. Took French for 4 years in high school, but I don't remember a single thing. A lot of the items from the 14s were missing too. So the killer stole them, but some items were found a little bit away from the crime scene. Some sources said it was about 800 meters away, and some sources said it was about 500 meters away. Regardless, they were all found, like, away from the crime scene. Some of them weren't found, like the weapons were not found. But the things that were found down the road that led to the camp. We all know, like, it was there.
Yeah.
Some of the items found that were stolen were a wallet and clothing items that were Neil's, and also his shoes were found. But keys to the motorcycles were taken, but they were never found, and the motorcycles themselves weren't taken. But Neil's shoes were found about a half mile down the road. And they also found the knives that Niels and Seppo brought, but there was one knife missing at that point. But the knives that they found weren't the murder weapons. So there was one knife that Niels and Seppo brought that were missing, but it could be the murder weapon, but we just know it was a knife. So Neil's shoes were found a little bit away from the campsite, like I said. It was about half mile down the road. And what's really weird about this is his shoes were found partially hidden underneath some, like, brush and stuff, and there were bloody tracks leading from the tent that matched Neil's shoe prints. So whoever attacked all of them was wearing Neil's shoes and then walked away from the campsite in them.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I feel like this is like a whole horror movie case or something.
Friday the 13th is loosely based off this case, actually.
Really?
Kind of, but I mean, it doesn't even... It's loosely based off because, like, and, like, later whenever I talk like the media stuff that, like, happened with this is somebody did say that this is like the Friday the 13th, like.
As soon as you were talking about the tent and going camping, that's the first thing that popped in my head. I was like, oh god.
And it's just like, but yeah. So they also found some pop bottles and items they brought to go camping, like the teens brought. And one of the bottles they found a fingerprint that didn't belong to any of them. So whoever also did this drank out of their alcohol at some point. The bottle of Samisori liquor was never found. And then the one knife they packed wasn't found, like I just said. So I think, because I also added pages in this, so I'm so sorry. My notes are, like, all over the place. Because, like, as I was researching this, I kept finding more and more and more and more. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this ever gonna, like, stop? Because, like this case is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
But we'll keep going. So, again, about Niels' shoes, which shows that the killer walked away from the scene wearing Niels' shoes. But I need to back up for a quick second before we keep going. Around 11 a.m. at Lake Bodom, a local carpenter, Risto Siren, came across the tent, went out for a swim with his son. That's when he saw what happened and he called the police. And police arrived to the scene around 12 p.m., so it took them about an hour to get there. They started investigating, and this is when they determined the killer never entered the tent. They were also able to determine that the killer cut the tent's guidelines before the attack. So, like, he or whoever cut, like, the tent from the pole, so it just collapsed first.
Yeah.
The tent collapsed, and then they started attacking. And then they did that because the teens all were sleeping at this point, and that was leaving them trapped, but the killer was able to somehow know where their heads were because of the outline of the tent falling. So that's when they attacked. They also found Niels and took him to the Red Cross station and asked him what happened, and he couldn't remember. And he actually didn't wake up till 4 days later, but whenever they would ask him questions, whenever he was unconscious, he would just, like, not say anything, and he would just, like, make a noise. And then whenever he did wake up, he said he was in shock and said, "My last memory is when we went to bed and wished each other good night. After that, I don't remember if it was Wednesday or Thursday when I woke up." That's, like, for later. And then the police thought it was a good idea to ask residents of the area to help search for weapons and evidence. and hundreds of them did show up to help.
Wow.
And then, yeah, so they were like, hey, you guys want to help us solve a murder? So they can, like, ruin the evidence? Which is why which is why I think that this case was never solved, because they did that.
Yeah.
And the crime scene got tampered with.
Shout out to the police work. What wonderful police work.
But they also used metal detectors and sniffer dogs. And they had divers search the lake, and they found a small iron wire. So they searched the whole Lake Bodom area, top to bottom, with the help of residents. And then,
why?
I mean, I guess if you're trying to solve a murder and you need help, but, like, at the same time, like, you shouldn't be asking people who don't have any experience in crime scene investigations to help you.
A little weird.
But anyway, moving on from that.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention earlier, when they found Niels' shoes, his shoes were covered with specks of blood. So that also means whoever was attacking them was wearing Niels' shoes at the time. And then Seppo's shoes also were found a little bit further away, right around where Niels' shoes were found. It was like across the street, but his shoes were less hidden than Niels' shoes were. I don't know why. They also found a pillowcase at the scene, and it had blood and semen on it. And I'm just going to note this now. It did not match the victim's DNA, and also later it did not match some of the suspects either. So that's also like a thing. Where was I? So later on, two boys came to the police after they found out about, like, the murder and everything. They were bird watching that morning around 6 a.m. and they saw the collapsed tent, and they had seen a blonde-haired man walking away from the tent. Another boy who was fishing also stated he saw a blonde-haired man in the same area. And I'm sorry, but boys, why didn't you call the police when you saw a collapsed tent?
Good question.
That's just like, that's what I want to know. Like, I know it's like, but like, I don't know. It's just something that I wish, because if they would have called the police right then and there, they probably could have found the person who did it quicker.
Yep.
Or at all, like, really. But anyway, the eyewitnesses were hypnotized later and asked questions, and their stories stayed the same. They all were able to provide a description of the man, so police gathered a sketch, and they were trying to find who did this, so they brought in all suspicious people at this point as suspects. And then I have this as number 8, and I'm trying to figure out why. Oh, it's because this is also... So I'm going to back up a second. I'm sorry. Like, my notes are, like, a little bit out of order. So, I'm sorry. Bear with me. I'm a mess. When the local police arrived at Lake Bodom, they contacted. They contacted the Central Criminal Police. Then the special investigators arrived and examined all the bodies. That's when they found Seppo in the tent. And I said earlier how they were found. And now I'm going to go into a little bit more graphic detail. So if you don't want to hear more graphic detail, you can skip ahead. Seppo was under the folds of the edge of the tent, so you couldn't really see him unless you moved, like, the actual, like, tent flap. And he had his hands on his chest like he was sleeping. He was also hit with a blunt object multiple times in his head and jaw. When police moved the tent fold, they saw that he was stabbed through the canvas of the tent in the throat and chest. Anya was found face down. She was curled up and kind of covered with a blanket, so it seems like she was sleeping too. Which is also, like, horrifying because I sleep like that.
Yeah,
I sleep on my stomach. So it seems that she was sleeping as well, and she also had wounds to her head. Mila was found near the tent's entrance. Her left leg was parallel to Anya's back, and her right leg was bent around Anya's head. Her pants were down, and her shirt was also exposing her torso. She had 3 blows to her head with the blunt object, which would have caused her to die immediately. She was also stabbed 15 times after she was already dead. Yeah, in her neck and shoulders. And then Nils was on top of the tent. His whole left side of his face was bruised, and then the tent, that doesn't say tent, that says left. The left eye was sealed shut. His jaw and cheekbones were fractured, and he was slashed with a knife multiple times. He had a slice on his left forearm and cheek, and it was so deep you could see his teeth.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awful. But the police gathered a sketch for once Niels healed from his injuries, because he also was hypnotized. But the first time Niels was asked who he saw, he said all he could see was a black figure with red glowing eyes. All he could see at first. But when they hypnotized him and asked him, that's whenever he also gave a description of the blonde-haired man.
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you that sketch, and like, I'll get into it later, but that sketch looks cartoony.
Yeah.
So like, is he just lying? Is he just making it up? Or I don't know. But since this case has never been solved, there has been so many suspects in this case. The first one, I don't believe it was this one at all, but I'm just putting it in there because I've saw it come up, but it's crap. Like it's he did not do this. But you never know. So the first one is Pente Soininen. He was a 15-year-old boy who was convicted of a lot of violent crimes during the 1960s. He lived close to Lake Bodom and out that says at. Why am I reading out? I'm really struggling today. I am so sorry. At 22 years old, he was serving time in prison for crimes. He confessed to the murders and was interrogated. However, his confession did not make sense to police, and they didn't believe him. So he just confessed to the murders, just randomly. But he didn't do it, and his confession made no sense.
Why?
I don't know. But I'm going to put a trigger warning right here. Suicide. I'm going to go over it super, super quickly, and it's going to come up again later, so I'm sorry. He hung himself in prison, a prison transportation station later on. Some reports said that it was on the anniversary of the murders, but I don't know how true that is because I think that he was just making it up and he just wanted attention for, he just wanted the publicity. But it's sad that he did do that, and if it was on the anniversary of the murders, then that does a little bit suspicious. But at the same time, I don't think that he had anything to do with it. Because how would a 15-year-old boy be able to attack two 15-year-old girls and two 18-year-olds?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they were trapped in the tent, but like at the same time, like it seems like Niels got out and was trying to help defend, and that's why he was found on top of the tent. But I also go over that theory later. But I don't know. It's just like, I wish I knew what happened.
Yeah.
Like, I just really wish. So another one was a man named Pauli Uma. He was a fugitive and he received a mandatory labor order for vagrancy in Finland, which is also a crime in Finland. They were able to apprehend him, but when they did, he was drunk, so they had to hold him overnight. But he eventually was able to name 12 people who would verify his alibi the night of the murders. He was in a hut outside Helsinki at the time of the murders with like his sister and like her boyfriend and stuff. So like I don't think it was him either. But I just had to mention him just because he was one suspected. Now, the third one is who I believe did it, but I guess we could talk about like later about your opinion. But he is very likely to be the killer. And I believe this one, like, wholeheartedly. Like, him and maybe Niels. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he was Carl Valdemar Gilstrom. He was a 51-year-old man. He had a wife and a son. He was a kiosk vendor at Lake Bodom. He was the kiosk man that they went to. The kiosk, he owned that kiosk that they went to that day. And his house was also, like, close to it.
Yeah.
And that kiosk was at Lake Bodom near the south part of the lake. It was where many people got supplies, like I said earlier. He also lived close to Lake Bodom. He had a dark hair that was slicked back. It was not blonde, but remember the slicked back because the picture, the hair is slicked back.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like it. I mean, I don't think we have a picture of him, but he does. I don't think he looks like the sketch, but like slicked back hair. At night, you could think somebody's blonde when they're not, you know? Anyway. He had a temper and was known to be aggressive. Apparently, he hid razor blades and apples he had growing from the trees around his house because he did not want kids to take his apples. So he put razor blades in them.
Well, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
What is wrong with Carl? That is the question. He was a heavy drinker and he also hated the campers who stayed at Lake Bodom.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
Gets worse. He would also slash the ropes on the tents, which would make them collapse.
Like the tent did.
Another occasion, Carl shot a guy with a shotgun because this guy caught him hunting illegally and asked him to leave. So he just shot at him because he was angry.
Ow.
This next one makes me really mad because my dad was a truck driver. I would throw hands to this man. I would throw hands to you. Let's fight. Right now.
Clear up.
Carl even shot at a truck driver that was driving down his road, which caused glass to break and lodge into the truck driver's face. When he was caught, he said that he only did it to stop drivers from driving too fast down the road. But I think he just didn't like people driving down his road, because this happens again in a different scenario. But, like, why shoot at a truck driver that's just trying to do his job?
What is wrong with you?
Like, I would throw hands to you.
Literally, what in the psychopathic monster?
Right? This next part, he would even line the road with wooden planks with nails on them as road spikes. Make people's tires blow out so they wouldn't drive down that road.
Oh, he's pleasant.
Oh, yeah, he's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to go to dinner with him.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't be this awful.
Yeah, even.
Another occasion, Carl threw rocks at a teen who was just riding his bike past him. They just started throwing rocks at him, which also, blunt force trauma. He was also known to carry a lead pipe, and he had a hunting knife on his belt at all times.
So why hasn't he been arrested for this? Like,
that's what I said too whenever I was doing this. But I mentioned earlier about a kiosk that the 14s went to. Well, it was Carl's kiosk that they went to. However, Carl's wife was working that kiosk that night, but the 14s hung out a little bit after, buying their items, and because they were also eating ice cream. However, on the way back to the campsite, they did pass Carl Gillstrom's house, and they were on their motorcycles, so he probably heard them. However, whenever his wife got home, she told him about the 14s and how they were camping nearby. Why did you tell him?
Why?
Why?
What is wrong with you?
Why even married to him? Doesn't seem like a good guy. But after the murders, someone who was near the scene went to Carl's kiosk and told him about the murders, and Carl didn't have any reaction, and he was actually pretty nonchalant about it. Another suspicious thing Carl had done was he filled in a well on his property a little bit after the murders. Since he filled it, some people believe that's where the weapons were hidden, because they were also never found. After the murders, he's like, oh, I'm just going to fill in this well with cement. Let me just fill it up. You know, I got nothing to hide, but I just don't want this well anymore.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
Also, just a note, Niels and Seppo's shoes were found on the road to Carl's house. So they were found on the road to his house. So he probably just dumped them on the way home after this. Eventually, he was questioned, and him and his wife both said he was home and asleep during this time of the murders. His wife said her and the kids were in the bedroom sleeping, and Gillstrom was in the kitchen sleeping, but the doors between the two were open. My question is, who the heck sleeps in the kitchen?
I was thinking the same thing.
Like, I was gonna take a nice sleep on the kitchen table right here. Let me just clear it off and just lay on it.
Let me just crawl up on the kitchen counter.
We just roll out a sleeping bag on the floor because it's comfy in here.
Okay then.
Police did search Carl's house but didn't find anything. However, some people believe they did not really search that well because they didn't search the Filled-in well.
Why? What is wrong with them?
Also, another trigger warning for suicide. Carl, in 1969, drowned himself in Lake Bodom. He did it right by where the murders happened. However, before he did that, he confessed to a neighbor that he killed the campers. So his neighbor told him, if you really did it, then I want you to go to the lake and kill yourself. And then he went into the lake and killed himself.
Wow.
Also, before his wife passed away, she confessed the alibi for him was false. She said he threatened to kill her and the kids and if she didn't provide an alibi. So he lied. I think Carl did it.
Oh, yeah. Case
closed.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think he did it.
But this next one also, I feel like this next one's just full of crap, but
yeah,
I'm just going to go through it. The third suspect is a KGB spy, Hans Osman. His last name is spelled Assman. The next day after the murders, at 10:45 p.m., Hans was taken to Helinsky's surgical center. His overalls and hands were covered in red stains. His wife was with him. The reason he was taken to the hospital was due to severe stomach pains. He was unconscious, but when the doctor started to... Oh, also his nails were caked with dirt, underneath of them. So, just another thing. But whenever the doctors started to, see if... and, run tests on him to see, what was wrong... they performed a responsiveness test and poked him, and he giggled, so he was faking his unconsciousness. He was also giving a false name and telling contradictory stories about how he got injured. Why? After that, he showed no remorse or shame, but he started threatening them and demanding them to be treated. He also kept washing his hands with paint thinner to remove the red stains.
Oh.
Hans claimed, which is weird, that he was part of a Nazi prison guard at Auschwitz during World War II. I don't know why you would want to, like, say that.
Yeah.
Say, like, oh, I was part of this, like, all proudly like that. Why?
Interesting. Very interesting.
His clothing was never examined or tested by police at this point. After being discharged, he returned multiple times to be seen, and he shown a doctor an article on the unsolved murders. And then another time he told the doctor that he was also skilled with a knife and said that those never survived, with, like, as they did with the doctor. They were just admitting to killing people. By July, the doctors reported him to police because of how bizarre and suspicious he was acting. It got to the point the medical intern that was there to treat him the first time thought Hans had something to do with the murders, that he even bagged his red-stained clothing for police to examine for analysis. But police felt like he wasn't, so they didn't test his clothes. So I'm going to go back up a little bit more again. Remember how I talked about that sketch that police did? Well, it kind of looks like Hans, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I'll show you right now. So I have it saved on my phone. So this is the sketch. And then that is Hans.
Wow, that does look like him. Look at the eyes.
Yeah. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if it was Carl, but it could have been. But it could have been him too. But also, a month after the sketch came out, Hans cut his hair. He had long blonde hair. However, that sketch is kind of cartoony looking, like I said. And it was a man with large eyes, a straight nose, and thick lips. Long pale hair, combed back, round face, but a strong jawline, and red cheeks and a high forehead. But to the hospital staff, the sketch looked just like Hans, so tips came out after the sketch was released, but none of them came out with anything or anything promising. The sketch was a key piece to the investigation, but it's just, I think that sketch does look like him.
It does, yeah. Does it look like Carl?
I couldn't find a picture of Carl. Oh wait, that's Carl. Okay. It doesn't look like him. Okay, where was I? Also, Hans's clothing was similar to the man seen at the crime. There was also a man who resembled Hans at the funeral. He was photographed there. The picture of the man at the funeral also looked like the sketch. The sketch was also based off Niels Gustafsson's description of the man. He was asked again, was able to provide the sketch, but he was also backed by other witnesses. So they found this man at the crime scene, or at the funeral, not the crime scene, the funeral. Oh, and it looks just like the sketch.
Yeah, it does. Yep.
He looks creepy.
He does, yeah.
So yeah, many books have been written about Hans Osman and how he was linked to other murders, which included a 17-year-old Louis Kiliki, who was murdered while cycling home from a prayer meeting in May of 1953. Another book was published later in 2003 by Dr. Jorma Palo, who was training at the time Hans came in for treatment. The book was called Hans as the Killer. And allegedly on Hans' deathbed, he confessed to the murders. However, this can't be verified. He was ruled out because he had an alibi. He was with his girlfriend, his sister, and her sister, and her husband. And according to police's file, that the red stains was paint, and that fingerprints on the bottle was not Osman's. They released this file in 2005. So he was ruled out as a suspect, but I don't know. He looks like the sketch.
Yeah, he does.
But again, I think Carl did it. But at one point I also thought Niels did it. So let's go into that now. So Niels himself was a suspect. He woke up 4 days later after the murders on June 9th, like I said before. He was confused when he first woke up. He woke up not knowing what happened or where he was. But with him being the only survivor, he was like suspicious, but they didn't suspect him until way later, which is also weird. He then remembered he was at Lake Bodom with his friends and girlfriend. He was also found on the tent while everyone else was in the tent. Although there are many theories to this, that maybe he was trying to escape, or maybe the boys who came across the tent disturbed and scared away the attacker so they couldn't finish attacking Niels. Or when he woke up to his first... or maybe my theory is that maybe he was trying to fight back.
Yeah.
But I don't know. When he first woke up, his request was to see his best friend Seppo, which broke my heart when I found that out. His first thing was, I want to see Seppo. And I was like, make me cry now. I don't think you did it, because if you was requesting to see your best friend, and I'm like freaking crying right now, then I don't think you would be able to kill your best friend. Especially that was his best friend since 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt that you would do that. But again, you don't know how people are. And he was eventually released from the hospital on June 23rd. Police took him out the back exit to avoid reporters. Then he was taken to the police station, and then he told his story. So, to him, Niels and Seppo set up the tent on June 4th, 1960, between 7:30 and 8 p.m. The girls went swimming, and then the boys stayed at the campsite, drinking and fashioning fishing rods out of branches. They mixed the pop with liquor and didn't finish it because it wasn't good. And when the girls got back, they said no to drinking. Then Niels and Mila cuddled for a bit, and they all decided to go to sleep. And somehow managed to all fit in the tent. Anya was in the tent at the far right, facing in with her back against the wall of the tent. Seppo was next to her, facing her, and then Niels was facing Mila. He was the last to enter the tent. He zipped it up, and then he laid down. But Mila was on the right side of the tent with her back to the wall of the tent. And Niels was in between her and Seppo, facing her. So Niels used his leather jacket as a makeshift pillow. A few hours later, Niels woke up to Seppo looking for his fishing tackle. The sun wasn't out yet, so Niels said it was about 3 a.m. and felt like going for a swim. So he joined Seppo, and the girls were still asleep. Seppo went fishing, and Niels went into the water, but it was way too cold to go swimming, so he just went back to the tent. Once he got back to the tent, the girls were awake, and Seppo then came back too because there weren't any fish at this time. I guess it was too dark, and the fish were probably sleeping too. They all went back to sleep. At this point, his story made sense because Anya had a diary at the scene, and it matched what Niels was saying. Her diary had 3 lines, and it said, Seppo and Niels were drunk. They were up at 2 a.m. Seppo was in the woods. The next thing Niels remembered was waking up in the hospital. Since he couldn't remember, police took him to the Lake Bodom to see if he could remember any details. But it didn't help him remember this. So this is whenever they hypnotized him through hypnosis to try to access his repressed memories. So a doctor, Dr. Steinbeck, conducted 3 hypnotherapy sessions with Niels. They each were around 30 minutes. The first one, he didn't tell anything new, but the third one, he did. The third session, he did. When Steinbeck asked him if he heard screaming, he said he faintly heard the girls screaming and crying and saying someone had attacked them. Then when asked what he saw, he said he saw the tent collapse and it was on top of them. A man started hitting them with a sharp weapon, a hard weapon, and like an iron pipe. He was asked if he had seen the man before, and Niels wasn't sure. Then he said he saw blood all over Mila's head. Then when Niels described a man who was about 30 years old with long blonde hair, this is when he described the sketch. Average height and size, and looked strong, maybe worked in heavy labor, wore a dark plaid sweater with a green and black pattern. After the sketch was out, 9 men were arrested and had been questioned, but they all had alibis. The case went cold, but police still kept going through tips, but no leads were happening. Finland doesn't have a statute of limitations for murder, so it was reopened in 2003 due to the lead investigator wanting to try to utilize new advances in DNA technology to see if they could find anything, so they exhumed Seppo, Anya, and Mila's bodies. But it didn't bring any new evidence, but they retested items from the scene. The tent, it did bring new evidence and information. After 44 years after the murders, they arrested Niels Gustafsson. They arrested him on March 29, 2004. The police said that he was retired, a bus driver. That's not what that says. He was a retired bus driver, was married, and had grown-up kids at this point. The police said that Niels was drunk on the night of the murders and said that he wanted to have sex with Mila, but she rejected, and he went on a rage. Investigators claimed he got a broken jaw from a fight with Seppo, but that he killed 3 of them and arranged the scene to look staged, and that he self-inflicted the knife wounds and blunt force trauma to stage it. They also said that he was not allowed in the tent. Then he cut the guidelines out to trap them and then attack them after that he waited for them to fall asleep. I think the police were trying to blame it on somebody.
Yeah.
Why would he attack his best friend?
I don't know.
Plus, that doesn't really make sense with, okay, how is he able to give himself a concussion where he's asleep for freaking 4 days?
Yeah.
And how is he able to stab himself in the forehead?
I know, that's what I was thinking, too. How can you, what I'm thinking is, how you hold it. You can't do it hard enough that way.
Yeah.
To be able to stab a knife through your head, I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't think. I don't know, but I sure wouldn't think so.
Because, his injuries, I don't think you can self-inflict those.
No, I don't think so either.
So they were trying to fabricate something here.
Yeah.
But the investigators stated that they had discovered evidence that Niels Gustafsson's shoes had blood of the victims, but not his blood. The same year, Niels was arrested. 61-year-old woman came forward stating she was at Lake Bodom the night of the murders and camping with friends when Niels and his friends got there, and that she saw Niels was drunk and that she could tell that there was growing animosity between them. How can you tell that from far away?
Yeah.
But anyway, she said that she never spoke of it before because she and her friends swore to secrecy. All right, but couldn't remember the names of the friends she was with, except for one who was already passed away at this point. And she only ever spoke of this after being interviewed to do a documentary. And the campsite Niels and Mila, Anya, and Seppo were at didn't even exist, that she said. She also couldn't describe what they looked like. Niels also just denied the claims she spoke of, and Anya's diary never supported never supported another woman being there, but it did support Niels' statement. And she didn't write down that she saw anybody else or that they didn't have any arguments. So this lady was just lying.
Yeah.
She was just making up a story because she was asked to do a documentary.
Wow.
She was like, okay, yeah, I saw everything that happened. Like, Katie, why would you wait 44 years before you even say that?
We were sworn to secrecy.
Yeah, with 3 of your fake friends.
Yeah. I don't think so, girl.
Nice try.
Nice try.
So Niels' trial started August 4th, 2005. The prosecution was trying to use the claims of that woman and was also trying to use a confession that Niels allegedly made while in custody. But there was no official record of that confession, and Niels denied it. The defense argued that DNA evidence didn't prove Niels was guilty, and that the killer could have stolen Niels' shoes along with let me restart that. The defense argued that DNA evidence didn't prove Niels being guilty, and that the killer could have stolen Niels' shoes along with several other items of clothing that was taken. The defense provided their own DNA evidence. The pillowcase that was found and the semen on it didn't match Seppo or Niels. They argued that it was someone else who committed the attack, and that the fact Niels' own blood was found in the tent, which shown that he was also in the tent at the time of the attack. So, I didn't say this earlier, but where Niels was laying, he did have blood where he was laying. So, he was attacked in that tent because his blood is in there.
Yeah.
Also, that from the blood splatter analysis, whoever was wearing the shoes at the attack was standing at the door of the tent. Also, that it was unlikely for Niels to walk back into the campsite barefoot, especially walking 500 meters, because both of his feet and socks were also clean. So it's possible that whoever was standing at the tent, like the door, that's where they were attacking. It's very possible for them to attack all 4 of them and only to get 3 of the blood, because maybe Niels was behind like the pole, or maybe he was behind like the flap or something. Also, like they said, it's hard for him to walk from the campsite to where the shoes were found and then walk back because his feet were clean.
Yeah.
Also, why would you want to walk barefoot?
Yeah.
Plus, they didn't find footsteps following back to the campsite. They only found them leaving the campsite.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. Make up your mind, I guess. If you just want to try to make up some story, that's fine too, I guess. You know, whatever.
They're really just trying to put someone away.
Yeah.
Like, it don't matter who it is at this point.
They
like,
it's
old man Joe from across the street.
Let me blame the survivor, who's probably guilty that his girlfriend died and his best friend died. Let's blame him.
Yeah.
He killed them.
What's wrong with you?
Whatever. They displayed the tent in the courtroom, and the prosecution stated Niels cut the tent up after the murders to enhance the staging of the attack. But again, blood splatter analysis showing that the cuts in the tent were made before all of them were attacked.
Yeah.
And 7 of Seppo's stab wounds were found to be made while being cut through the tent. So they could tell that the knife went through the tent before it hit blood or before it hit the bodies. So how could he cut it before he attacked them?
Yeah.
This makes me heated.
I know.
I'm so heated. Okay. So, keep going. Both the defense and prosecution brought in neurology specialists. The defense brought in Ollie Tenovo. They claimed it was very possible for Niels to have suffered from memory loss. The prosecution called in Eero Hirvenvasalo, who said Niels' injuries were consistent with being attacked with a fist and that it wasn't a heavy object with blunt force trauma. They also stated he only had a concussion. It was not enough to get memory loss. All right. Whatever. Make up whatever you want.
Okay.
However, the court agreed with the defense, saying the boy's eyewitness testimony of a blonde-haired man leaving the scene was very credible, which ruled that an unknown assailant had attacked the teenagers, and that the court rejected the prosecution's statement of Niels and Seppo's fight triggered the murders. They also agreed that it was impossible for Niels to inflict his injuries on himself. After 500 days in custody, Niels Gustafsson was acquitted of all charges. He was given $49,936 in compensation for his suffering of his arrest and trial. The trial ended in October 14th, 2005. So there are more suspects that I didn't dive into because I kind of believe it was Gillstrom.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, this is what I saw. I didn't look into it. But there's another person, Polly Pirinen, who Mila was allegedly dating and cheating on with Niels.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know how true that is. There was another one, the Stone Pocket Man in his 20s, who always carried a pillowcase full of stones with him, as a weapon, and he was from the West Coast but lived in Espoo at the time, and was a police top suspect before they started to suspect Niels. There was another one, Antti Oskanen, lived in a cabin near murders, worked at nearby construction site, and there was another one, Vaiho Matalamaki, a trans man who dressed as a woman and did not have an alibi. The only other one that I could probably think would be a possible one would be the Stone Pocket Man. I didn't look into it because I saw it, but I didn't see any other resources saying anything about these people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I just wanted to do a mention.
Yeah.
But I think it was Carl.
I do too. Yeah, I do too.
I think it was Carl.
Literally all signs point to him.
It does. So, the Lake Bodom Murders have haunted Finland for decades and inspired books, conspiracy theories, movies, and a death metal band called the Children of Bodom.
Oh.
Yeah. There is a book from the teenager that Gillstrom threw rocks at called The Legend of Bodom. 3 generations of children have grown up being told not to stay out late for the fear of the Bodom murderer. And that fear will remain until the murder is caught. It has been 64 years since the murders of Seppo Boisman, Anya Tulanmaki, and Mila Bjorklund. They were all laid to rest side by side in the Helsinki Parish Church Cemetery. Niels Gustafsson has never had a criminal record and never shown signs of being angry or violent. The killer probably will be a mystery forever. I hope not. I want to know who did this.
Yeah, I know.
Like I said, I think it was Carl. Yeah. And then, like I said earlier, Friday the 13th was kind of loosely based off of this, in a way, because they use the campsite and stuff, but not really. It's just part of media. But yeah, that's what it reminded me of whenever I heard about this case, and I'm just I want to know who killed them, because I don't think it was Niels. I really don't think it was.
No, I don't think so.
But I just think it's funny that they were trying to place it on it.
I know.
They're you killed them, you did this. And
they were really pushing it.
But I mean, also, why did he first say that he saw a black figure with red eyes?
Yeah.
Was it a demon? That guy is
Now we're gonna have paranormal conspiracy theories to add on top of it.
But I don't know, that sketch.
But
this was the tent, and then
it's really
is
small
all
for
of
4
them.
people.
Yeah. I don't know who Eric Holstrom is. He's a picture in this. I don't know if he was another. I didn't see that. But this was the tent, at the scene. They obviously raised it up. That guy's holding it. But yeah. So that is the Lake Bodom Murders. I wish I knew who did it. Let's solve this case together.
Yes.
Let's travel to Finland and try.
Let's do it. Put on our detective hats.
It's but at the same time, we can't really. Also, what I said about that pillowcase with the semen, Carl Gillstrom's DNA was never tested.
Really?
He was because he passed away before.
Oh yeah, that would be.
He was never tested against the DNA. I want to know, what if they test it and they find that he did it?
Yeah.
Because he was the only one that wasn't tested.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else that was suspects were tested.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, what do you guys think? Who do you think you got? Who do you think you guys did it? You guys, who do you think did it? I am struggling now. I gotta stop. Who do you think did it? Tell us in the comments.
Yes.
Email us. Let us know, because this is definitely a mystery. And if you want to see the picture of the sketch and all the pictures that I showed Maddie, go to our social medias at Dreadfully Twisted Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Share the podcast with your friends and family. You can listen on Spotify, Pandora Radio, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Podcast Index, Listen Notes, and YouTube. Give us a like, subscribe, or
5 stars.
5 stars. Yeah, give us a rating on all the forums that you listen. And yeah, share it with your friends and family so we can stay relevant in the charts and so we can keep this going.
Yes.
And it would also like greatly help us. And yeah. And we love you guys.
We love you.
Stay positive. Look out for your friends.
Be a good person.
Don't be like Carl Gustrom.
No. Do not.
And help us solve this murder.
Yes, help us.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Maybe.
If you have any tips, call.
Okay. And we'll see you guys next week.
See you then.
Bye. Bye.